Hey, podcast listeners, it's Bria Wong with you once again with Nonprofit Lowdown. Today, my guest is Erika Carley, who is a senior development. All right, you know what?
It's a mouthful.
Let's do that again. How would you like for me to introduce you?
You could say Senior Director of Operations with Chive Charities, but
Director of Operations with Chive Charities. I had this written down and I have too many windows open. All right, let's try that once again.
Okay.
So let's take it from the top, y'all. And just so you know, obviously this is edited. So if there's something that you want to restate, feel free to do so. Okay, let's start this again. Hey, podcast listeners, it's Bria Wong with you once again with Nonprofit Lowdown. Today, my guest is Erika Carley, who is the Senior Director of Operations with Chive Charities. And we're going to talk about monthly giving programs, which is a hot topic, something that everyone should be thinking about in Q4. And some of the most amazing things that we're going to talk about with Erika is that she has a 98% month-over-month retention rate, which is like mind-blowing. Erika, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I've been looking forward to this. I'm excited to be here.
So I'm excited to have you. I'm going to pick your brain on all of the things, but before we jump into it, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey into the nonprofit world?
Yeah, absolutely. So hi, Erika Carley. I reside in Fort Worth, Texas with my husband and my 3 little kids. And I've been working in nonprofit development and management for just over 13 years now. I started in Los Angeles, then Austin. I've been kind of all over the place. I've been remote for the last 4 years. So remote is not new to me since 2020. So going back to the beginning, in late 2013, I partnered with my former employer, Mike Tolan. He's a film director and producer in Los Angeles, and he wanted to launch a private giving circle. So I now, almost 10 years later, I continue to advise and run ops for PACE. It's called Philanthropy and Community Engagement. And we travel to 2 cities every year to meet with and hopefully support impactful local programs that are replicable, scalable, very broadly focus on children and family issues. So anti-recidivism, foster care, social and emotional learning based after school programs for Title I, parenting support for underserved families. So my exposure to all kinds of nonprofits and their behind the scenes, their models for giving, their models for monthly giving has benefited me, I will say, tremendously. So for the last 6.5 years, I worked for Chive Charities. I currently serve, like Rhea said, as their Senior Director of Operations. And we're an organization dedicated to supporting what we call life-changing grants to veterans, military families, first responders, and rare medical diagnoses. We do this 1 to 2 times a week. These individuals have life-altering or life-threatening needs, and the grants range from like $2,000 on the low end to upwards of $70,000. They average $35,000 a piece. So we're doing that 1 to 2 times a week. And those grants include things like therapy equipment, communication devices, adaptive tricycles, ADA accessible vans. I could go on and on. So after we fund the grant, we write and share the recipient story in a very authentic way to bring awareness to that particular cause. And we steward current donors and hopefully convert new ones through that. And that's what makes us truly unique. Emotional storytelling is at the heart of what we do. It's a big lever as we pull for monthly giving.
Okay, we're going to dig into that real deep in a second, but just before we get to that, because I feel like monthly giving is something that we don't often talk about. Like, I think there's a lot of ink spilled around major donors, foundations, annual appeals, but monthly donors is not something that gets as much attention. Tell us why a monthly donor program actually makes a lot of sense.
Oh, you're setting me up to talk all day long about monthly giving. So, okay, first, there's the benefit of sustainability and your ability to plan short-term, medium-term, long-term. It's a whole lot easier. We all know this as fundraiser to retain a donor than it is to acquire a new one. And while you'll still need to spend a good deal of time, of course, on stewardship and retention as a part of monthly giving, you won't feel that pressure to identify where that next big check is coming from. And that can be very anxiety inducing for fundraisers. Another benefit is really more of a gift, that long-term relationship building with donors and the value that comes with that. I mean, one of my favorite things is to see a donor who's been maybe donating at $10 a month, $25 a month, and then they get a new job, they're evolving in their career, and then they're getting $200 a month. So you have this opportunity to build a really meaningful relationship with them and sort of foster and facilitate their evolution as a charitable giver. I love that. And it also gives you the ability, and I think this is really important, and again, something that people don't really talk much about, it gives you the ability to foster a true culture of impact among your donors and your community. As a donor, when you feel like you have a stake in something, you're more likely to stay. You're more likely to continue your impact, which retention, big on retention. So we all want to be a part of something bigger. And so many of our monthly donors have become true advocates for our cause. And that's the goal. That's a big goal of ours with monthly giving. It can feel like a family of support and advocacy, which can have a domino effect. It just has to be designed that way.
Okay, we're going to talk about design in a second. What I hear you saying is the advantage with monthly giving program is it sort of evens out the income lines, right? So you're like, sort of month to month what's coming in. It's usually unrestricted giving, and it's a way to engage smaller givers in meaningful ways because, like you say, maybe someone might have a hard time giving $500 at one time, but spread out over the year, it's still the same amount of money, just given over 12 months. Is that right?
And oftentimes that amount by the end of the year will be more than what they might have given as a one-time donation. So that's really important too. In terms of revenue, it can actually, it can really be a huge support for your organization and your budget and your ability to plan.
So what I love about this idea of monthly giving is it's very tied to the way that we buy now. I mean, when I think about like Netflix subscriptions as an example, like we're used to seeing that money going out of our account every month, right? And Netflix has to keep giving us more stuff in order for me to keep re-upping. So my question to you is, how do we think about designing a monthly giving program that is different than an annual appeal campaign?
That's a great question. And I would say the biggest difference between the design of an annual appeal and the design of a monthly giving program, it's all about the layers. And you hit on that already. That when you have that subscription with Netflix, they're going to keep having to, do things to keep you coming back. So it's the layers of strategy, the layers of tactics, the layers of objectives and goals. So I'll just start with an annual appeal really quickly. For an annual appeal, I'm focusing on the mission of our organization, how we're positively impacting the communities we serve, maybe sharing a story, numbers to back it all up. I'm focusing on demonstrating the impact of the donor I'm communicating with. I think personalizing annual appeals as much as possible is important. Same thing with monthly giving. I'm thinking about a specific, bold call to action that'll compel our donors typically at the end of the year to send in that additional donation while I'm simultaneously casting a vision for the future and connecting the two. So how are you going to help us achieve that? How are you going to be a part of helping us get there? And then, of course, you're always going to be thinking about that promotional strategy. How are we getting this out? Video, handwritten cards. I'm big on handwritten cards. I will shout it from the mountaintops all day long. Email, direct mail, ads, a combination. So annual appeals should really be a stewardship tactic for existing donors. And then for the new one-time donors that you may convert through that annual appeal, you can then begin to pivot and steward them and work to convert them into monthly giving. So
okay,
yeah.
So we talked about the design of an annual appeal. How is the monthly donor program different then?
So the design is going to be very different from the annual appeal. Most notably, the design will have those layers that I talked about in the beginning for the longer term strategies. And I'll break it down into 3 parts. So one is donor acquisition strategy. You've got to ideate and build out a campaign that will convert new monthly donors. And you might do this once a year. We do it once a year, big campaign in the middle of the year. You might do it twice a year. You'll determine the cadence of that. But the campaign will have its own strategy. You'll have goals, objectives, a strong message and call to action, and maybe there's an incentive or a benefit attached. We do that a lot, and I can talk more about that. But you'll need a comprehensive promotional strategy. How are you getting that out? Casting a very wide net. And also, how are you tailoring your messaging to different audiences? So your messaging to new prospective donors will be very different from donors who've contributed before in the past, whether that be once or many one-time donations. It'll be different from donors who have canceled or become inactive for whatever reason. And you'll also want to target, and this is something that we do and we've seen some success with, you'll want to target those past prospective donors who might have dropped off at checkout. So you left something in your cart, let's try and get you back in the door and really sign up for that monthly donation. You also might take the opportunity to provide your monthly givers with the opportunity to up their donation, to upgrade their monthly giving amount. So that's the donor acquisition part. Then I would go into donor stewardship. So
yeah,
no,
before you get into donor stewardship, because that's a whole enchilada I want to get into. But I'm wondering, what is the segmentation between donors who are annual appeal donors versus donors who might be monthly donors? Are they the same group? Are they different? What's the relationship between the two?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So for each one of the campaigns, we're going to look at we have many donor lists, donors who have given one time, donors who have supported us in a way, maybe it's like not monetary, but they've supported us in a different way. They've said that they wanted to help in some way. Especially for the donor acquisition campaigns for monthly, I'm looking comprehensively. I'm using every list we have. For our annual appeal, we're really focusing on our monthly givers and those one-time donors. They know our mission, they're familiar with it. This is, again, I sort of put it into the stewardship category. So it's a little more focused when it comes to that communication. And in that way, I think that one-to-one personalization is a little bit more doable.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, it's with your annual appeal campaign, you're also targeting your monthly donors. So it's not an either or, it's a both and.
Yes, this is an opportunity for our monthly donors to give a donation on top of their monthly.
Oh, I love that. More is more. Okay, let's talk about, so we have the folks that we know that we're targeting. What is the communication that you put out there to compel them to be monthly donors as opposed to one-time givers?
Well, yes, it's the storytelling. So I think you have to be able to communicate about your model. So what about being a monthly donor is valuable? Whose lives are you going to be impacting when you become a monthly donor? So for us, we're looking at, and I'll talk specifically about a campaign that we just ran a couple of months ago. It's our 10-year anniversary this year. It's been incredible. We have, by the end of this year, we will have 555 grant recipients with nearly 20 million in aid. So we built out this campaign that was all about, because of you, 2022, because of you, our donors, this is what we've been able to achieve. But we also pulled back the curtain. So we pulled back the curtain on, for as many yeses as we're able to give, we have to give just as many nos. We sit in a conference room for the entire day. We print out photos of every single applicant, and we comb through every detail to try and identify who is the highest need. And it is heartbreaking, heart-wrenching, absolutely the hardest part of our jobs. And in pulling back that curtain, we were giving our donors, our prospective donors, the opportunity for us to turn no's into yeses. That was huge for us. I mean, we could really demonstrate, illustrate. We had photos of what it looked like in that room. What does that process look like? And what can you be a part of? How can you take those faces that are literally on this side of the room and pull them over to the other side? It was a really beautiful message. And I think that as nonprofit fundraisers and campaign designers, it can be easy to sort of shy away from your challenges. And it was a little bit scary to go like, hey, just so you know, like we say no to a lot of deserving people. And that sucks, right? And so I think it was powerful for our community. And we have a community that aren't monthly donors, just our community of support who love what we do. it was an opportunity to really show them, this is the behind the scenes, this is what really goes on, and we can really use your help.
Okay, Erica, let's get to the juicy stuff because everyone wants to know about retention and stewardship. So 98% month over month is ridiculous. So what are you doing in order to retain those donors? And I want to get really tactical here about like how often are you communicating? What are you communicating? Is it via email? I mean, tell me all the things, please.
Yes. Okay. Donor retention. We are big on donor retention. Obviously, 98% month over month. People say that's impossible, and I say you should talk to the people who are writing those cards every single day. I had a conversation with Andrew Olson recently, and in talking to him about donor retention, I told him that a comprehensive retention strategy will consider the philosophical, the tactical, and the strategic. So you're playing the long game with retention. And your magical weapon, there is no silver bullet, will consider all three. It's going to be a commitment to the process and to understanding your donors and their charitable evolution, really the philosophical, the tools you ideate, build, and deploy, your tactics, and that the higher level goals and objectives that those tactics fit into and support your strategy. So I attribute a lot of our success to going old school. We put a premium on one-to-one communication. We are high touch, the highest of the touch. So when you sign up to be a monthly donor, you get a personalized welcome text, then a handwritten card if you downgrade your monthly giving level. So people go, what? Why would you send them a card if you downgrade? Look, that donor, instead of canceling, maybe they lost their job. Maybe their financial situation changed. Maybe inflation is really hurting them at the grocery store, right? Thank you so much for sticking with us. It shows us one thing, that they are loyal to our cause. So we're really diligent about that. We're also diligent about making sure we're acknowledging when a donor is upgrading their level. These are little things that are sort of easy to miss. It's like, oh, they upgraded from $10 a month to $25. Is that significant? Yeah, it's really significant. Over the life of them donating, if we're going to retain them at 98% plus, absolutely it is. So we send them a card. We also have benefits when you hit certain milestones, from 3 months to when you hit your year mark, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. So we have benefits now because it's our 10-year anniversary. All through 10 years, we're going to have to get creative and come up with some new benefits as we continue to grow. But we also do things like monthly newsletters, and then that one-to-one communication to make sure I'm available over email. If you need to talk, I'm available over phone. We have members of the team that are able to text with our donors. So it's the high touch. It's the high touch, and it's also paired with our model of demonstrating impact through storytelling. So while the high touch pieces are super critical, I also think it's important to create a model for impact that naturally supports retention. So for example, like I said, making storytelling a key component of what you do and how you promote awareness, which will be driven by your content team. And then there are also some retention plays that take investment on the front end, like member benefits, like I just mentioned, but then they become passive once set up and automated. So a donor hits a year and then that pin is sent to their home.
Oh my gosh, Erica, so many questions are coming up for me. So let's stop at, I just want to talk about the kind of tech infrastructure that you need behind you and the data that you're looking at in order to make it happen. Because I love that you have these touch points. I love that you're constantly thinking about, how are we creating value? Like, what are you doing? Is it a CRM system? And you said automation, like what are you using for that? Like, how are you thinking about the backend infrastructure to make this happen?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's something I get all the time. What CRM are you using? And I almost hate to say it because I know it's going to be disappointing, but we created our own. We built it from the ground up with a small web dev team. We made that investment. And so when you log into your Chive Charities profile, you can see how much you've given, when you've given. It's all very clear. It's easy to downgrade, easy to upgrade, easy to cancel. I can go into your donor account. I can access all of that information. We're constantly working on new updates to that and trying to roll them out. with our development team. So there are CRMs out there that I think can support a retention strategy like this. I think what it takes is a member of your team, a fundraiser, who's going to take a step back and audit, how are we touching our donors? What are those communication tactics that we have? And if you're going, okay, we're sending emails to all of our donors and they're all personalized, they all have their name at the top. That's not enough. That's not enough. That's not true personalization. Can you send an email to a donor if they already have a touch point with you, right? They're reaching out and they have a question about something. Remind them of their impact. Hey, Michael, I just want to let you know, I'll answer your question, but I just want to let you know that to this day, you've donated X amount. You have impacted X amount of causes with this much in aid, and we are so grateful for your impact. It has been critical to our success, and we're able to do our work because of donors like you. Now I'll get back to answering your question. Every chance you get, remind your donors of how impactful they are. It helps them to feel seen. It helps them to feel heard. I mean, look, these donors, they're investing a lot. They're investing $100 a month, $500 a month, $1,000 a month. That's a lot of money. And they could be giving it to anybody. So you really want to make sure that they know exactly how important that donation is to you. And we've seen a huge success in retention because of it.
So Erika, talk to me about this, because one thing that I've noticed in my career, and I think it's becoming increasingly true, is it feels like people are so overwhelmed with communications, emails, texts, whatever, it's all coming in. And so I think as a nonprofit, it feels a little bit like screaming into the abyss. Or like, I keep pushing this information out, but I'm not getting a lot back. Is that something you've experienced? And if not, what have you done in order to mitigate that?
Yeah, so great question. And I would say that when you truly personalize your communication, you're going to get a response. More often than not, you're going to get a response. And the responses are also going to keep you going as a fundraiser. The responses that I get from the one-to-one emails I send truly ground me in my work. They remind me why I'm doing what I'm doing. I mean, of course, our recipients and that impact is huge. But when you're in fundraising, and like you said, sometimes you feel like you're screaming into the abyss and you're not getting much back, that's what's really going to hold you down, motivate you to keep going. And I think that when you are in that place, it's important to go, okay, I'm screaming into the abyss. I'm not getting much back. Why? You've got to turn that around on yourself as the fundraiser. What am I not doing? What could I change? What could I test? And get creative, and don't do it on an island. Engage your content team, engage your programs team. Hey, programs, can we talk about recipients? Are there some updates we can share with our donors? Is there anything that you can think of that might be compelling for our donors to know? You know, we gave Envera that van a year and a half ago. Do we have an update photo, a quote from her family? Engage your content team. How can we create a really compelling graphic to include in this next email that I'm going to send? And then it's that high touch that, hey, Danielle, as my donor, I'm talking to you, you're my donor. I know you, we're connecting, I'm making a connection with you. I'm not just sending you an email that is designed for 4,000 people. That being said, you can be overwhelmed by the numbers. And I've been asked before, okay, well, I have 10,000 monthly donors, or I have 50,000 monthly donors. I'm overwhelmed. How in the world am I supposed to have high touch with all of them? And I would say, first of all, good problem to have. Second of all, if you have that many donors, you may be able to hire another dev employee, but also be strategic about it. In the beginning of the year, audit your donors, segment them in a strategic way, and then calendar it out. In January, these are the donors that I'm going to have high touch with. February, these are the donors. And then if you need to, engage other members of your team. It doesn't just have to be you. So give members of your team the opportunity to have that high touch and to feel that high touch, that response, because it's going to be wonderful for them too. It's going to help, encourage and foster an environment of good feelings, charity, motivation to continue doing what you're doing. Share that with the team.
So a question for you, because as you know, my wheelhouse is really major gift donors. What is the relationship between your monthly giving program and your major donor program, if you have one? Like, is that an
Yeah.
on-ramp to the major donor program? What's the relationship?
Yeah, your monthly donors will certainly become a pipeline for major gifts. Absolutely. And we've seen that happen very naturally. So um, yes, the relationship is certainly there. I will say at Chive Charities, monthly giving has taken monthly giving has been on the front burner, and major gifts has been on the back burner for us. We invested in monthly giving from day one. And we have prioritized it. We've invested in it, and obviously, it's been huge for us. It's our bread and butter. It was our bread and butter in 2013, just like it is today, and it continues to grow. Now we are taking a pivot into major gifts. We've had major gifts over the years, but it's actually a very exciting time. I actually listened to your podcast on major gifts a couple of evenings ago and taking notes. And we are focusing on a small number of those monthly givers that have a certain history that we've identified, that we feel like sort of primes them for major gifts. So there's absolutely a connection there. And I will also just make the note, and this kind of goes into like a mistake that we made with our monthly giving program. It's been very successful, but we didn't launch. We have had 4 levels of giving from the beginning. So you could give $10, $25, $50, and 100. And we always had that enter your own amount field, but it didn't convert very much. It was rarely used. And because our revenue from monthly giving was so high, we thought, this is great. We'll continue to steward, we'll continue to retain. And we didn't think to make an actual level to give more. And it wasn't until April 2020 that we created a new level, platinum level, that was $200 and above a month. And within a month, we had 131 monthly donors donating $200, $500, $1,000, $5,000 a month. Some of those were new donors, and many of them were upgrades. So that number continues to grow, and today actually makes up 20% of our revenue. So that's really important. It can be a pipeline for major gifts, but you can also get some pretty significant gifts from monthly giving if you give your donors the opportunity to do it, to give.
I mean, I have so many questions, but okay, let's start here. When you say that actually, let me back up. Let's talk numbers. So for those who don't know, like, how many donors are we talking about? What's the number that are new? How many upgraded? And what's the overall revenue of your monthly giving program?
Oh gosh, over the course of I'll say we have just around 4,000 monthly donors. So those have come to us since the beginning, since 2012. And like we've mentioned, we're retaining at like 98% month over month. So of course we'll see drop-offs here and there. Something that we really like to get ahead of are like passive cancellations. So credit card information expiring, and we do that on a weekly basis. We pull a report every single week, top of the week, we go, here are the credit cards that passively canceled. We get in touch with them directly. Again, that's a great touch point to have to remind donors of their impact. 99% of the time, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm going to go upgrade it right now. And they upgrade it. We can also upgrade it for them. I know I'm not answering your question directly because, how many of them are upgrades? How many of them are, I mean, it's all over the place. I mean, we have 4,000 monthly, hundreds of them were giving at $100 a month, and now they're giving at $250. So that data, if we broke it down, it would certainly be a lot to look at. But many of our donors, our average donor sticks with us for 3+ years.
And what do you do when you get drop off? Because I mean, 98% is really impressive, but that means 2% do drop off. Like, is there a process there?
Yeah, there's a process. And I think the most important thing is really showing gratitude for that donor. So always keeping that door open. When a donor cancels, we have a drip, kind of a drip communication strategy that provides them the opportunity to kind of understand their impact, the impact that they've had. And if they would, want to come back, then our arms are always open. They will always be a part of our donor family. But it's, it doesn't happen all the time, but when it does, again, we focus on that gratitude. We'll send them a handwritten card. And we do see people coming back. when they can. And a lot of the time they'll give us an explanation, which I think is also really important. So they'll say, I lost my job. Whenever I get into a place where I can give again, I'm going to give again. I think because of the sort of culture of impact we've been able to foster, though, we see a lot more downgrades than we do cancellations.
So let's talk about the pipeline. So obviously, you've been great at retaining donors, but in order to grow, you need to continue to fill that pipeline. Where are you finding these new monthly donors? Is it largely a social media strategy? Is it word of mouth? Are you running paid ads? Like, where are these people?
Yep, that's a great question. We are very comprehensive in our approach. So we are utilizing, every social media channel that we have. We're utilizing LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We actually don't do a lot in the way of paid ads. Here and there we will do it, but those algorithms, they get you. They're tough. That being said, we do have a comprehensive strategy. Our social media following is pretty large for a nonprofit, I would say. We're well over 40,000 on Instagram. So we have a pretty big reach there. And we have an email list of 80,000. So that's been critical for us. We get to go back to that email list a lot. Of course, we are strategically not inundating those inboxes, but it is a great way for us to communicate and then convert new donors. And then we also have a pretty strong relationship with partners, and we're able to utilize that as well. So raising awareness through our partners. And our mission is multifaceted. So we are serving veterans, first responders, military families, rare medical. Those are 4 separate communities. So our partners are in all 4 of those spaces. It really opens the door for us to create these meaningful partnerships and to impact the community in even bigger ways. So when we have a big campaign, we'll go to our partners and we'll ask them, hey, can you put this out for us? Can you do some cross promotion? When they have campaigns, when they're trying to do something, we'll do the same for them. So that's been huge for us. We have partners who are like point of sale partners for us. So when they are through their checkout system, if somebody is buying a product of theirs, they have an opportunity to donate directly to Chive Charities. That creates another pipeline of potential donors for us. They donated through this other product, and now we can reach out and try and get them to convert.
Let's talk about revenue strategies, because it sounds like from the beginning, as you said, Chive Charities was really focused on the monthly giving program. I'm just thinking about the small nonprofit organization that may not have a lot of bandwidth. Is this one of these things where you really have to double down and go deep on a strategy, or like how much capacity and bandwidth do you need in order to really implement a monthly donor strategy well?
That's a great question. And my answer is it totally depends. I think a mistake organizations make when it comes to their monthly giving is that it's entirely on the shoulders of the development or fundraising team. And it's not, or it shouldn't be. So monthly giving should engage fundraising staff, yes, but your content and programs teams are critical to the successful program, and their participation should be built into their workflow, built into our model. So I talked about that a little bit earlier. But I think that's critical, even when it comes to partnerships, right? If I'm working with a partner and I'm writing that strategy and I'm developing that partnership, I've got to have my programs team is going to be instrumental to connecting direct impact with our recipients. And they're going to be communicating with the recipients, communicating back to the partner with content, doing the same thing. They're going to be bringing in their expertise. How can we get this out there? How can we, promote this partner in a way that is going to meet their marketing goals, right? So it's all very comprehensive. I think that's a big mistake that nonprofits make. They're so focused on the development and the fundraising aspect of it that they forget that if they just open it up and let it breathe and engage the skills and expertise of other team members, they can really take it to the next level. And look, these numbers that I'm sharing, I know they sound really big, but our team is small. We have an 8-person team. So we have 3 people on our development team, including myself. We just increased from 2 to 3 this year. And we were successful before that. We have 2 employees running our content team and 2 in programs, and then we have our executive director. So I think that sometimes monthly giving, it can feel like a mountain to climb. It can feel like, how do I even get started? But I think it's a team effort. It's not just the fundraiser. And I think that if you can first identify somebody who's going to be in fundraising, if you can only hire one person, you've got to hire somebody who is really strategic in the way they approach things, somebody who is passionate about the work that you do and your mission, and they're able to communicate about that. That's where you start. And then, you also want them to be a connector, connect the rest of your team members into that strategy, and make it a space where everybody feels like their expertise is needed and wanted and valued. Everybody should feel like they're a big part of it.
So, okay, 2 questions. I could talk to you all day, but I know folks are blowing up the chat here. So
Okay.
your 80,000 email list, I want to talk about this because obviously, your monthly donors are going to be coming from your audience, which are your email list members. How are you building that list? Like, what value are you adding to compel people to put their name on your list?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So we have a couple of really critical levers that we pull when it comes to our recipient stories. Our recipient stories are, if you want to go and read them, chivecharities.org/stories. We are covering all of our categories with these stories, and we're not just ending it there. We are updating our community on the people that their dollars are impacting. So that's a big part of it. So if you want to stay up to date with Jalen or Kimberlexia or Chris, sign up for our emails, and we're going to be providing updates. So that's been huge for us, because even if you're not donating on our website, if you read a story, we get thousands of views on our stories. So, okay, that doesn't take anything. Read our stories. Maybe you share about them on your social media as a first step. Sign up for our newsletter as a first step. That's a way to support us. And you're going to be able to learn, get the updates of how this ADA van impacted this family, or how this therapy, this critical therapy, changed the life of this boy named Liam Dodd. That has been huge for us. So finding those more nuanced ways to ask people to join your email list, I think, is important. Of course, go to the website, pop-up's going to come up, join our email list. But why? Why should they join your email list? You've got to spell it out and tell them, what are they going to get out of receiving your emails? That's something you're tremendously good at. I see your subject lines, your emails. Hey, I know exactly what I'm going to get when I get, Rhea's newsletter, and I want to read it. You've got to make it something that people want to read. So you also have to remember that doesn't stop there. Then you've got to make your newsletter compelling. You've got to make it something that you have that first chance to make it right. Make it compelling so that they're going to want to open it time and time and time again. So I know we have limited time. I know.
We could go on forever. Okay.
But
last question from me, and then we'll get to the Q&A. But, one thing that I think some fundraisers may really shy away from is the sharing of the personal stories. And I think, we've seen how some of it has been used in ways that feel kind of icky. We talk a little bit about poverty porn. So how do you differentiate for yourself and your team and the folks that you serve, telling stories in a way that is both, dignified and respectful, but also heartwarming and compelling?
Great question, and so important. So number one, we use a trauma-informed approach, and our programs team has been trained on that. Other members of our team have been trained on that. We adopt language that is careful and that is sensitive to the people that we are serving. We are serving populations of people who have been dealing with a great deal of trauma, medical trauma, TBI, PTSD. The list is very, very long, and we need to be very careful. Even aside from our stories, the language that we use on our website, I think it's important too. If you're so close to it, sometimes you can continue to use language that you think is okay, but it's actually potentially triggering to some individual or community. So engaging your board or like an advisory committee on what language we should be using, what language is going to be respectful and above board. we do that. We have an advisory committee that's made up of leaders in all 4 of our grant categories. That's been very helpful for us. When it comes to our stories, our goal is always to tell that recipient's story authentically. And I think that where you can get into the trouble of like the poverty porn kind of stuff is, how did they engage with that person before telling their story? We are very diligent about that process, very careful about that process. We begin to gather that story and that narrative from day one, from the moment they build out their application. They also know that part of our model is storytelling. We are using the recipient story to raise awareness for the cause. That's in our model. So we steward them through that process. They know throughout the process that we will not share anything that they do not want us to share. We check for that over and over and over again. And once we get their narrative and they're approved for a grant, we set up a call with our programs team and with our storyteller, with our content director, Brittany Myers. She's leaves me in awe every single week, 1 to 2 times a week with her stories. And they have a Zoom call. It's face to face. Tell me anything you do not want me to share. Is there anything in here that you want off the books? And they're able to make a connection that that really positions Brittany to write their story in the most authentic way. And from her chair, her number one priority is to make that story a gift back to that recipient family. And that's what allows us to storytell in such a successful way, in such a careful and respectful way. That story, we hope that our community likes it. We hope that it converts donors. Of course, we want to know what the recipient thinks, and we survey them afterwards. And you know, we're very careful about the questions that we ask them. And the number one is, you know, do you feel like your story was told in an authentic way? And I cannot tell you how many times we have received feedback that says, I am in a community of people who people turn their backs on. I am not seen, I am not valued, I am not respected. And I felt seen for the first time by your team. I mean, that's the gold. That's what we want to hear. And that's what makes our work so meaningful.
Yeah. And what's recurrent to me is one of my favorite anecdotes is about Danny Meyer, the restaurateur here in New York. And he says, imagine everyone is walking around with an imaginary sign that says, make me feel special. So that seems to be true of your monthly donors and of your recipients. Okay, we're going to get to some questions because people want to know all the things. So Alana, we'll start with you. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question? Oh, Alana is not with us. So Alana's question is, how would you advise launching a giving level, like at $25 or multiple donation levels? I suspect I know the answer, but.
Yes, multiple donation levels for sure. And I would start at 10. Start at 10 because it's doable. I can give $120 a year. I could do that. I could not have a coffee at Starbucks once a week, right? That seems doable. And that's going to get donors through the door. One thing that I've been asked a lot is, how do you segment donors, like based on the value of their giving? And I said, my answer would be, that's a mistake. I want to treat every single one of my donors like they have a ton of value. So $10 a month is still funding our recipient grants, just like $500 a month is. So again, to answer that question directly, yes, multiple giving levels. Start small, but don't end small. Don't end at 100. Make sure you have that bigger giving amount that gives a donor with, you know, deeper pockets the opportunity to say, hey, I'm going to be really impactful. I feel like I can give $500 a month. I'm going to do it. And then, you know, steward them through that process so they keep coming back.
Which sets us up really nicely for the next question coming in from Danielle. Danielle?
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for all of this. This is great.
Yeah.
So you have so much high touch going on, and I'm just wondering, like, how does that, like, what are the numbers? Like, how does that break out in terms of emails per month, cards, calls, and then when do you know to pull back, or when do you know that you need more? Like, what's your gauge for, are you looking at open rates? Are you, how do you assess that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks so much. So we do an audit every month. So at the beginning of every month, we sit with the content team and we go, what's the communication look like? Is our monthly newsletter going out this month? Do we have any other campaigns running where we're going to be making an ask? So we audit that every single month because things come up, things change. We want to hop on a certain trend, something's happening in the world. Maybe one of our recipients has a bigger need. So we want to sort of take that and fill that, but we're going to need our donors' help. So I think it's really important to audit that in the beginning of the month. But also, just in terms of numbers, if something doesn't come up in the month, we're always going to be sending a monthly newsletter. So maybe if we have a campaign, it might replace that. We try not to use that 80,000, newsletter list more than once a month. But that's once a month, and that's not super personalized. So I wouldn't really call that high touch. We're designing it in a very thoughtful way. We're working with our content team. But when it comes to the high touch, that's a lot less. So numbers may be any given week, maybe we see 5 downgrades in membership. Maybe we see 5 upgrades. And we're writing cards on a rolling basis. So as soon as we see that come in, we're writing the card. That makes it more doable, honestly, because maybe that's a couple cards a week instead of, holy smokes, we've got to write 600 cards, right, for this campaign, which, by the way, we also have done. When you do a donor acquisition campaign, we wrote a handwritten card to each one of those new donors, and it was a huge lift. And it took us a couple of weeks to achieve that. But even though I'm saying high touch, I think it can sound overwhelming. It doesn't have to be. I think you just have to be strategic about it and do it on a rolling basis. So I mentioned earlier that if a donor reaches out, about a question they may have, or maybe they're having a technical issue, making a donation, something like that, that's an opportunity for you to have a high touch communication. And maybe that only happens once a week. Maybe you have a week where that happens 15 times, but it all should be pretty doable. So I hope that answers your questions.
But question about content, Erika. So are you sending the same content to your donors and your mass list? I mean, I guess I'm just trying to think about like how much time are you spending on each of these streams?
Yeah, so when we write a story and we push it out, it does not go to our donors. We don't just write the story, publish it, and then, hey, check out, this grant recipient story. They're going out all over our social media channels. If you follow us on social media, I mean, I don't know now if it's a reel, maybe you'll see it on Instagram. It's been challenging on social media, but we publish those stories and then they're there. The monthly newsletter is where we'll take that monthly impact and then we'll illustrate it. We'll, demonstrate the impact of our donors in that monthly. So I think that is confusing. While we are launching 1 to 2 impact stories, recipient stories a week, we're not hitting up that list or, sending those to our donors. We're keeping that for the monthly newsletter, which is going to be pretty comprehensive. And it's going to highlight any updates that we have. So the stories of that month, any updates we have from recipients, and then anything, behind the scenes at Chive Charities.
But is that a different stream of communication than with your donors? Like, I'm just thinking about segmentation within your newsletter list. Like, is there a special stream of comms that you do for donors?
Yeah. So I will say the monthly newsletter that goes out will typically go to our big list. Now, if we are doing, if we have some sort of special communication going out, if it's about a donor upgrade campaign, or if it's about a partnership campaign, we're going to use our active donor list. So we certainly do segment, but for our impact as a whole, we see our newsletter as a potential converter for people who are following our work, who, they've shown an interest in our work, but we just haven't been able to get them to convert yet. And we still feel like we're stewarding them to do that up until that point.
Got it. Really helpful. Thanks. All right. I think we have time for one last question. Jalen, do you want to jump in here and ask your question? Or you have 2 questions, so pick one of the questions. Is Jalen still with us? Oh my gosh. Jalen is not with us. Oh, there you are. Hi.
Hello. Yeah, I do have 2 questions. I will ask, how / if you do at all, how do you engage board members in your monthly giving strategies?
Yeah, that is a really good question, Jalen. And I will say, our board members, the function of our board hasn't really been to support our monthly giving program. We've been able to do that so successfully with our team. And so they've been a little bit hands off there. I think we're relying more on them for those connections to potential major gift donors. I think where we really have value in our board is their expertise in the grant categories, the communities that we serve. So they represent those communities in a lot of ways. They help us identify the applicants with the highest need in our applicant review that happens 4 times a year. So we all come together. Our board is a big part of that. And they'll give medical advice, or they'll talk about what a veteran might have gone through. And so that's really where they've been so helpful. But as it relates to monthly giving, they aren't really invested in that. Although maybe we can have another conversation and talk strategy, because you could certainly develop a strategy for that.
All right, you know what? We'll jump in with the last question. What does the conversion look like? So if you have someone who's following you on social, they're a big fan, they're liking, they're commenting, etc. What's the process by which you convert them from a social media fan to an actual donor?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think we deploy a number of tactics on social media. A lot of that has to do with our stories. So typically we're using our social media to get our followers to go to our website, to read the story. And the hope is that that's what converts them. So, we want to be pushing out meaningful, compelling content on social media. It's rare that we're making a really bold call to action, although we have in the past, or we'll sort of tease it on social media. It's hard on social media because it's so limited. What you can say is so limited. The asset is so limited. And so I think the goal, the strategy for us that has worked, and that I think is true for most organizations, is that if you can get that follower to click through to your website or to your campaign landing page, that's where you're going to see the success in conversion.
So good. And actually,
and hopefully Jalen too, when you do that, you're asking them to join the newsletter. So then they're in the pipeline. They're no longer an Instagram handle. They become an email address.
yeah, it really speaks to the ladders of engagement, right? Like, so you're trying to get them from like, I'm just a casual observer, to actually actively being on the email list, to opening your emails, to becoming a donor, right? So it's a longer term strategy.
Exactly.
Friend, this has been so awesome. I've learned so much. I know everyone listening in has as well. Where can folks get in touch with you if they want to learn more about you and your work?
Yeah, you can get in touch with me on LinkedIn. I'm Erika Carley. That's probably the easiest way. And you can also always get in touch with me at erika.carley@chivecharities.org. But I love connecting with people offline, online. I love workshopping ideas. So it's been wonderful. And all of these questions have been really insightful.
Okay, wait. This is my last question, which is a fun question I've been asking all my guests. If you had a metaphorical billboard to communicate anything that you wanted to the world, what's on your billboard?
Oh, that's such a good question. This might feel a little bit cheesy, but I think I would honestly say, be kind. I have 3 little kids, 4 years old, 3 years old, 1 year old. And right now I feel like I'm in that time of life where I'm trying to show them what it means to be kind to yourself, to be kind to others, to be kind to the future you. And even now, in my professional life, I'm trying to also say that, be kind to myself. I think we can be our own harshest critics. So I think that's what I would say. And there's some layers to that, but be kind. I think it's so important.
I love that. That's such a nice way to send us off. So thank you so much, Erika. This has been so great. I'll make sure that all of your info is in the show notes for folks, and have a great day, everyone. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
Bye.
This has been so fun.